Well, welcome everyone. We're going to start on time because we might have a ton to say. We might have a little bit less than a ton to say, but we're going to get started on time. My name is Justin Wright. I work for Sunrise Community for Recovery and Wellness, and I'm also a partner of the People's Opioid Summit. So I'm super happy to be here. I'm going to be your moderator for today's session. I am a person who's in long-term sustained recovery, which means a lot of different things. It means my employer can trust me now. It means that my family love me dearly. What else does it mean? It means that I'm no longer a threat to anything that's on your porch. It means a lot of different things, and I'm thriving in that. Today's session, we're talking about employment-based recovery services. And so our presenter today is Elizabeth Butler. And I was telling her a little bit earlier before the session started that I did some creeping on some of her information. And so here's what I got for your intro. Are you ready for this, Elizabeth?
Go for
it. She heralds to us from Step Up Durham, where she's the employment team manager. She upholds their mission for adults and children to be transformed through employment and skills training. And from my understanding, that transformation has been especially beneficial to over 26% of the people that you support, which are people who are self-professed in active recovery, which is really cool. Elizabeth has an incredible personal story around this with some lived experience around the stigma and injustice that comes with some employment systems that we have. And I read a quote of hers and I loved it. I'm putting it on my wall and I think it's fantastic. And so I'm just going to quote you, Elizabeth, word for word. You said, "My passion for this work is to fight for those who have forgotten how to fight for themselves and to honor the doors that have opened before me by always doing my best to make the road easier for those who come behind me." Makes me tear up. So without further ado, I'm so excited to introduce you. The floor is yours, Elizabeth. Let's hear what you have to say.
Well, thank you so much, Justin. And sometimes rehearing what I'm passionate about is so encouraging as well. Thank you, everybody, for being here and for allowing me to share with you. So, yeah, I'm Elizabeth, and my journey to step up was a bit different. I spent about 5 years in prison because I was making all the wrong choices for all the wrong reasons, right? And coming out of prison, I went into Step Up Durham. Well, I went through the Step Up ministry process in Raleigh, North Carolina. Um, Coming out of prison and going out, I knew that my sentence really started the day I came home. Sometimes, and that's just like with recovery, you are focused and you want to do the right things. And then there's all of these stigmas and barriers in place that prevent you from doing the one thing that you want to do, which is get work, be successful, take care of yourself and your community, your family. And so coming out, really excited, really passionate, and I could not find a job right away, but I'm motivated. So I'm ironing people's shirts for $1 a piece, just trying to make money in my neighborhood. And thankfully, I end up finding employment. So I was released March 22nd, and I get hired. My first day of work is May 9th. And then May 13th, I rupture my Achilles tendon. If any of you are athletes, if any of you have ever suffered an injury, I want you to imagine what that feels like. The thing about me was I was so desperate to be successful, to not go back to prison, to make it. I didn't have family and friends to support me. I walked on that ruptured Achilles tendon from May 12th all the way through June 1st, when I could finally feel like I can go to the doctor. They gave me a prescription, and here I am now, after surgery, after prison, taking these pills. Thankfully, I did not relapse into substance abuse. Thankfully. But that was such a dangerous time. What kept me motivated? I had a job that seen the effort that I was putting in. They're the ones who were like, take the time off. We will hold your job. You've already done it. They spoke worth into someone who felt worthless. They empowered me when I felt alone. And that support and that community of the job that I got, who took a chance on me when society was really saying she's not going to make it, gave me enough of a push to take the medication for the 3 days after my surgery and then stop. And I stayed there until I started working at Step Up, and here I am now. I am not unique. There are many of us in this country who have struggled with substance abuse in the past and who will make the right choices. But employment is such a key component of that. Employment, yes, it takes care of your basic needs, right? So you can pay your bills and buy the things you need and have food, but it also gives you a sense of structure and self-worth and discipline and accomplishment that really, really put you on a path to long-term recovery. I am very proud to work at Step Up Durham. So, about 180 of our participants have come through the criminal justice system. Only 6 of those have recidivized. I think there's a direct correlation between employment, which is what we do. We are an employment-based program. Our first thing, step one, is getting someone a job at living wage. And so to say 180 have come to us and only 6 went back, I think that that's an amazing statistic. Those 6 that went back did self-identify as struggling with substance abuse recovery. And so we are now looking at, okay, what could we have done different, right? What systems could we have put in place? Because while working is good, $9.75 an hour, $10 an hour, realistically is not enough. It is not enough to sustain someone's life and to help them. And so we focus on gainful employment. We focus on living wage. To have 26% of our participants who've identified with substance abuse, it becomes about how do you build an employment opportunity that's going to support that, support recovery. It's not just about finding a job, it's about keeping a job and getting a career, right? And so we do a lot of employment coaching before even placing someone in employment. If they come to us on day one and they're taking our workshop, the first thing is trying to understand the person. What are the things that are going to trigger you to go back? I had the fortune of having a woman on my caseload. She was just released from incarceration and had struggled with addiction for years prior to being incarcerated. During our one-on-one, my question to her was, what's the thing that causes you the most stress? What's going to cause you to want to escape whatever the situation is? And her thing was, she knows she's excellent, but too much pressure can be do the opposite for her. As she gets a job and she gets promoted and she's given more responsibilities, it feels overwhelming. And that feeling will cause her, it's a trigger for her to go back. When we can understand what someone's triggers are and help them identify that, right? We don't want to tell them the answer. We want them to come to that point of self-realization, because when they do, then we can help them to build that plan in place. Substance abuse is a huge topic for me for numerous reasons. So I am first generation American. My father's from Dominican Republic, my mom's from Cuba, and they migrate to New York. And unfortunately, there's this huge thing that happens in the 80s with addiction, right? And my dad has suffered with relapse and relapse and relapse. And that always scared me. My sister suffered with drug addiction. But add into that, just this year, earlier this year, my 21-year-old nephew, Alex, bought on the street something that he thought was Percocets. Common prescription, everybody takes it. What he didn't know was that it was cut with fentanyl. He dies at 21 years old. The opioid crisis that's happening, and I know they say epidemic in all these words, and I call it a crisis. It's a crisis that we have to address, because people who are in that place tend to go and try to find it whenever they can, wherever they can. And now it's being cut with different things. And the result is, look at what happens. We lost someone too young, too soon. Alex had been struggling for a year to find a job. A year. He lost his job at the very beginning of the pandemic. He tried a lot of things to find another job. Alex unfortunately had a criminal background and he did not have his GED. Those are two huge barriers when people are trying to find employment. How can we change the narrative? How can we change things where people realize maybe you don't have the education, but you do have the drive and the skills, and give an opportunity for that? I mentioned that I have been incarcerated. I ended up getting a job teaching at Wake Tech Community College, coming home, right? So I'm an adjunct instructor. I teach people how to use computers and get jobs. And then I decided 2 years ago, I don't have a college degree. I want to go to school and I want to study and further my career. And I was a teacher at this community college since 2016. And when I applied for school in 2019, my application was denied. They denied my application for education. I had to do a special request in front of the dean of the school and the board in order to go to school. So you hired me to work for you, but you denied me the opportunity to further my education to advance my career. I am strong. I am resilient. And thankfully, I work at a place that believes in just pouring in people. And that is not everyone's story. Everyone, though, is deserving of the same opportunity and access to gainful employment. I am very grateful for the employment partners that we do work with. So Duke Hospital, University Hospital, being one of our biggest employment partners, all the way down to the locally owned coffee shops and bookstores. It's amazing that they're willing to do that. And I think if Durham can set a tone with saying, hey, all of our citizens deserve our opportunity, then I would challenge the nation to follow that example and go forward. There's so much more we can do around employment.
I had a question for you, Elizabeth, real fast. How did you make the connections with the businesses that you're connected with for employment options in the community?
Yeah, so Step Up in Raleigh has been around for about 30 years. And so they really started this a long time ago. When I became employment recruiter, it really became about being strategic. So if we have people with this skill set, and then kind of like what you did to me, I began to internet stalk them and go and try to find out. There's a warehouse on Capitol Boulevard in Raleigh, and there's a food truck that sits right in front of it. And I noticed that a lot of people would go out there and eat their lunch. So I went there, was like, hey, where do you work? And just to make connections. And that's part of the fighting for people who cannot fight for themselves. We find local employers and we take that hit. We go in there and say, hey, would you hire from us? I know you're looking for people. And we begin to advocate for our participants. We have someone who came through the program. He was struggling with substance abuse, living at Urban Ministries, and it was him and his wife together. And it took an incredible amount of strength for him to stay in recovery when his wife relapsed. Now he works at a local nonprofit as well. He's completely transitioned and made the drive. um, so whenever someone comes through the program, we ask them what they want to do, how much are they looking to make an hour, and if we don't have that relationship, then we go make the relationship, to take that pressure off of the participants, to take that pressure off of them. We take that hit.
That is so good. I mean, because that's a huge amount of pressure, even just that initial contact. So it sounds like you're saying like you kind of make a warm handoff, like, hey, we know these organizations and this seems like a good fit. Can you all get together and figure it out?
Yeah. And, during orientation, one thing I tell the class is, people always say it's not what you know, it's who you know. And I want to challenge them to think farther. It's not who you know, it's who knows you, right? I can know Justin all day, but if Justin doesn't have any idea who I am, he's not going to listen. So we have to be deliberate about making relationships. Another barrier a lot of people face when you're in substance abuse, like when you're in addiction, you may not have access to the things you even need. So, technology, it's to the point, especially with the pandemic, where if someone doesn't have the technology available to be able to do their job search, then we will take them laptops and let them use them, or they can come to our office and we'll be there to help them. A lot of people get overwhelmed even with the application process. Have you ever tried to submit your resume online and then you get 10,000 emails that are not from the job you applied for? That constant feeling of overwhelmingness is what we try to combat, because really that's the hardest part about staying sober. It's not just not doing it, it's when all of the things happen that you can't control. And so we try to do anything we can to fight that.
I love that. Yes. I mean, if you've ever been lucky enough to apply for a job and you've done it that way, you're right. Like you get 10 million emails. And, I hadn't thought about it before, but really the most overwhelming part is trying to figure out how to even connect, right? Like it really is like, am I able to, did the resume get in? Did I do the resume right? Were there any misspelling things? Like, what's a resume look like? Like all of those things are just because, just personally, I've had the same job here with Sunrise for a while, but I help people with resumes. And I looked at my resume the other day compared to what's out there now.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks ancient, and that was just like 5 years ago. So
Yeah.
to have that, all of those extra stressors taken off a person, it's gotta be super useful and helpful.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We're always paying attention to what's popular in the market. What is the way to get things done? And so the 3-day workshop, we consider it like a boot camp. Someone comes to us and says, hey, I'm looking for a job. We're going to make the resume, but we're doing it together. So you don't have to worry about typing it up and stuff. Let's talk through it and you can see the process. But we don't make them perfect. The reason is very simple. We're going to give it to you and I want you to tell me what you see. Tell me how we could make this stronger. And so that way they have a sense of control over what's going out. We have volunteers who come in and conduct mock interviews. Interviews are scary. How many people fail the question, why don't you just tell me a little bit about yourself? Stuck. They don't know what to say, how much is too much, which part do I talk about? And we record the video so that afterwards, with one of us that are employment counselors, we can sit down and watch it and say, what did you like about what you've done? And where do you think you made a complete mess? Because the more you can practice something without the pressure, the easier and more confident you become when it's actually time to deliver. We talk about practice makes permanent. And it's just the same with recovery. You practice recovery every single day. Addiction is a lifelong battle that you can never quit. So every day you wake up and you start and you just try. And when it gets hard, you reach out to your network. I have a foster mom who I love. She's amazing and took me in as a teenager and really helped shape me into a strong woman. If I'm having problems with my job, I know I cannot call her because her answer is going to be fight everybody, tear the place down. I made you strong. You don't have to take that. And I love it because she's trying to empower me. Professionally, she's not the one I can call at that moment. I need to call someone who's going to help me just think through the stress of what's going on and work. And we want to teach people that when you're in recovery, you have different people for different things. And that's okay. Like, it's okay. And if you feel that no one in your personal life is going to understand the journey you're on and really support you, then that's why we're here. Yes.
I've never really thought about it because it seems like I'm very intentional in a lot of different ways in my recovery, and a lot of people are, because we've been trained to like know your self-care stuff. Make sure if you're a meetings person, go to your meetings. Make sure you're connecting with a sponsor or a mentor, all those types of things. But the people who are in our circles, for me, like just by default, they've dwindled down so that I know who I go to for what. But I don't have a lot of coaching around that. That's just like 9 years of struggle busting, like trying to figure out how it is that those people came into being. So I love that. Like, you're like, cannot go to the foster mom.
Cannot love her, but no. And, you know, so many of the people that we serve are really in the most desperate of places. So either coming out of, some of them are in substance abuse houses, transitional houses. Some of them are just coming out of incarceration. Others, for whatever reason, have ended up in the homeless shelter. And even for those who have their own house and car, they've seen their life fall apart. And so now they're trying to rebuild. Sometimes when you're desperate, self-care is the very last thing on your mind. Everything is off your mind except work. And that's where we find, again, that statistic of 180 have come to us, only 6 recidivize. Because with everything else going on in life, with everything else that's going on to distract you, you know you can go to work, and for those 8, 10, 12 hours, however long you're working, you can just thrive. You get to prove yourself there. And that sense of confidence that you get, like, man, I went in there. There's nobody better than me. The place I got hired after prison had never hired someone with a criminal background before. It's called the Umstead Hotel and Spa. It was the only 5-star, 5-diamond hotel in the state. And I went in for my interview and I tell them about my criminal background. And the housekeeping supervisor loved me. HR, not so much. I'm a flag. She advocated for me. And I had to go through 4 different interviews to get someone to advocate for me. What was the success? I knew all the reasons they shouldn't hire me. But all I know is I'm the best cleaner you are ever going to find in your life. That room will not be cleaner than when I do it. And so even that, people in recovery, everybody has something, that thing that you know you do better than anybody else. You know it. How can we get you to talk about that? Talk about that. And any employer worth working for is going to recognize that you're going to help them increase their profit by achieving their goal and all of those things. And so I really hope employers can shift the focus. A lot of people want certain demographics to work for them. The thing is, there's a lot of job hopping that happens, right? I'll work here 6 months and then I'll go here and that. People in recovery, I find, want stability. They crave it. You give them a chance, you'll never regret it.
What would you say to some of us who might be like super new to recovery, or maybe are still trying to figure out some of the kinks of how to become stable? And that job is like obviously a very huge part of that. What would you say to someone who would come into your office and just try to admit to you, like, I'm not good at anything. Like, I want a job. I don't have experience. I've been out on the streets for however long, and I'm not good at anything. How would you work with them?
My first answer is very simple. If you've been out on the street for 3 years, you're good at something because you have managed to survive on the street. So maybe, and so tell me, then I ask the questions. I do feel like for people in recovery, being able to tell that story, whatever part they want to share, is important. So I want to understand, what are you good at? Okay, you were on the street, you didn't have a car. That means you can be on your feet all day, every day, right? You can carry your stuff physically all day, every day. Sounds like you might do good in a warehouse where they need people who aren't going to want to sit down and aren't going to be complaining when they have to lift 40 boxes. What do you think about that? Or, okay, so you like to be outside. You've been outside, right? What do you think about landscaping? Do you have allergies? Like, does the pollen bother you? Because landscapers always are looking for someone. So it's beginning to identify what their situation is, what they already are doing, even if they think they're not good at anything. For the ones who are homeless and stand, especially in Durham, there's places where they always stand and they have their safety vests on and they're asking. Seems to me you're great at interacting with the public. You know how to talk to people all day and you don't have any problem asking. A retail position where you're kind of asked to kind of engage with the public and talk because you have a great personality. It's speaking life into what they are right now and then getting them to believe that there's more on the other side.
You are really good at what you do, I can tell. Because I'm like, how do I get one of these in Asheville, which is where we're from?
I just believe, I believe in the person. I really do. I believe in the person. And again, I never want, it sounds like a great story. Like, oh my God, she got out of prison and she ruptured her Achilles tendon and she would walked on it and she's so strong. I was not strong. I'm saying that honestly. I was completely desperate and felt completely alone. Like, if I don't do this, there's no one else. And
Yeah.
if we can figure out a way to make people not feel that, you should be driven. You should have goals, but it should not be to the detriment of your health and yourself. But there are people like that. Let's find them and get them working. How do we get them working? And how do we get them to see their worth?
Would you mind speaking um, to the idea of purpose? So anytime I've ever got a job, the second that I walked out of there and they said, yes, you have it, or I got the call, like my chest is puffed out. I'm calling somebody saying, I'm making the money now. Like I'm doing it, right? And it makes everything better. I have like this, and it's not just because of money. It's because there's something like inside of me, I think, that just makes me feel more valuable. Do you see that a lot in the participants that you support, and what's that look like?
Yeah. No one, a lot of the people we serve don't feel that they're going to get the job until they get the job. And that sense of joy that they get, like, oh my God, they picked me. Like, they picked me with all of my barriers. We do this thing where we're always asking them, tell me about you. And they can list out 1,000 things negative. And sometimes it's not even what they necessarily believe about themselves, it's what they've been told and they've been rejected so many times. So when someone gets a job, they're ready to go. They do feel the purpose of it, they feel the confidence of it, and they feel the value. And they tend to just, that first 90 days of the job is so critical. It's so important. And they're calling us every week. Oh my God, this week they gave me this responsibility and they let me do this. And I showed them that. And you can hear it happen. It's beautiful, actually.
It just takes me like immediately back, right? Like immediately you think, I've been there. I remember that feeling, and it's so good.
Yeah.
Do you have, as I was thinking about what you're doing, and I'm wondering, do you have a specific way that you incorporate people's recovery into that job search? Is it, because I don't know much about the program. So I know that you're seeking people and helping them with employment options and training them up. But how much of it has to do with, hey, let's make sure that this recovery thing is in the forefront? Or like, how do you incorporate the recovery aspect or do you, or can you?
Yeah, what we do is give people options, right? And so when they share with us on day one, listen, I'm struggling with substance abuse recovery, and this is what our focus shifts from immediately finding a job to immediately finding the treatment option that's going to work for them. Some people are not encouraged by going to NA meetings or AA meetings. That doesn't feel like a healthy space for them. So they're looking more for like this one on one person. I'm grateful for our volunteers. So we offer something called a co partner. So if I'm in the program and you're my co partner, so every week you're my person, you come to class with me and then we're talking through life and trying to figure out what's going on. And so not only do you have a step up staff person, but you have a community member who's tying in. Then if we know, some people say, being alone is so hard for me. That's the thing that bothers me. We're finding every free community event possible to try to figure out, what do you like to do? And then, for example, I am having lunch with one of our participants tomorrow, just not about anything, but just to say, hey, we're here. So each person's recovery journey is very different, and we are very deliberate about tailoring it to that person. If they are actively really struggling with recovery, then we do not worry about finding a job. We worry about finding health. And then we'll go into the job search, because we want it to be the worst thing is to help someone get a job when they're not ready mentally, emotionally, and then they crash and burn, because it does the opposite. It pushes them further into that path.
Who does that? I'm just saying, like, who cares enough to put your recovery first to make sure you're okay for the job? Like, I haven't heard of that before with any kind of agency that deals with employment. So why does Step Up do that? Like, this is very different, right? Like, for other employment agencies, they're not going to give a flaming whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, you have your shit in a pile, pardon my language,
Yeah.
or you don't, and you're going to get the job or you're not. And if you
Yeah.
don't, or you get fired, then you probably can't come back. And there's no personal care aspect to it.
Yeah.
Why is your organization like that? Like,
Yeah.
it's just, how
You
did
know
that
what?
happen?
I was so grateful to come work at Step Up Durham because of that. Our executive director, Sarita, has to be the most amazing person I've ever met. And during our interview, she said it then. We are about walking with a small number of people and walking with them deeply, which means the focus is on the person. We are an employment agency, but I guess because we're a nonprofit, our focus is different. We want you to work and grow and thrive. And if you are in relapse, then you cannot grow and thrive. So we need to stop trying to work and figure that out. We're not a substance abuse recovery agency. It's not what we do, but we're deliberate. The same way we do with employers, we're going to do with agencies. Hey, you guys are really great at helping people with their substance abuse recovery. We have someone. Let's come together and serve them. Um, it doesn't matter if we serve 200 people a year and then all of them are relapsed or in prison, or we're not doing. Who wants to do that? That should be the question. Who wants to do that, right? Mm.
So if there's partner agencies who are on this, and like I was telling you earlier, we had like thousands and thousands of people. It's not just on this stream where we're seeing people, but this is broadcast. If there are partner agencies that are saying that's actually the kind of place that I want to refer some people that we're helping with their mental health and substance use stuff, and you're building some trust with them right here, like how do they connect with you, or like what's the process look like of establishing that kind of connection?
Yeah, that's a great question. So anyone can go onto our stepupdurham.org website, and the registration is there. I field a lot of calls from our community partners as well. The reason is this: if you're working with someone and you can tell me personally like how I can support them the best way, it's easier to serve them than just getting a cold application. So Elizabeth at stepupdurham.org is my email address, because we definitely want to serve as many people as we can and help them out. I think you're frozen. So I don't know if you're frozen or I'm frozen, but I guess I will just keep going. Okay. Um, And so the good thing is because we're virtual, we're able to serve participants from anywhere. So we have some right now in Chicago, we have them in Virginia. And so we can still provide the same. Oh, okay. Okay, thank you, Tanya, for letting me know. I was not looking at the chat, but I see you guys now. Thanks for letting me know you can hear me. Um, and so, yes, we serve people across the country now because of COVID, which has been a blessing. We are able to provide that support. And it seems like it would be harder to connect with people and to make it a meaningful relationship if you're virtual. But thankfully, we work with a team who's really, really invested in our participants. And so the job search, no matter where we're at, is always the same process. We'll still make connections with employers wherever they are, trying to help people get the jobs that they're looking for. Um, and then if someone does come to us and they're working and the job is under living wage, so we shoot for 13.50 an hour. Our rate right now for the month of September is at
Hey, sorry about that. Apparently, technology decided to take a nap for a second, but we are back.
It's that kind of day.
Yes.
I was just sharing that we are able to provide employment help for anyone across the country because we're virtual, and that looks the
Yeah.
same. So when we help someone find a job, it's not giving them what we think is the best. We really ask them those questions. Tell me, what hours can you work? Realistically, how much are you looking to make? What are the barriers to all of that? And then we cultivate those relationships. As a team, our goal is within 90 days from our workshop, someone is employed and that they're employed at 13.50 an hour. I'm happy to say for that the month of September, we exceeded both goals. Our average turnaround time is at 34 days, and our average wage is at $20 an hour. And that is sometimes you have people who get way more and sometimes people way less, but the average being that, we're very proud of what our team is doing right now. More than we're proud, the participants themselves are proud. And it's causing them to drive forward. The other cool thing about us right now is we're a staff of 10. We're a pretty small organization, and 6 of us are former participants, have went through the programs ourselves, and then 4 of us have actually been impacted by the criminal justice system. So I'm very thankful for our leadership for giving us an opportunity to give back, to serve. All of us have that same desire. We want it to be easier. We wanted to make it fair. We want it to be more equitable than it was for us. And so it's amazing to do the work that we do and see participants coming back and saying, hey, I want to work with you too. I want to do it too. Another cool thing we were doing because of the stigmas, not just about addiction, criminal background education, we started something called the Build Apprentice program. So let's say we have a gentleman who came through struggling with substance abuse, doesn't necessarily have the skills needed to get into a different job. And so we hire our participants at 13.50 an hour. And we go to companies and say, listen, I see that you own XYZ company and you need someone. I'm asking you to hire this person for the next 12 weeks and we will pay them. So you get a free employee and we will pay them and we will take that hit. But if after the 12 weeks that person is great, we're asking you to give them a job. Not one Build Apprentice that we have placed has not gotten the job at the end. And this is across nonprofit sectors, landscaping, warehouse, anything you can think of. And so that's encouraging, being able to have the belief in someone who has the belief in themselves to say, you hire them and don't pay them. We will pay them 13.50 an hour. And afterwards, if they're great, you hire them and pay them living wage. And so that's been amazing because employers sometimes are scared. And I'm not judging them for that. I can understand. If you're a small business owner, this is your entire investment. You cannot afford to fail. You want your business to go. So taking a risk on someone it can be scary. So, okay, let's remove the stigma. You won't take any hit for it. We'll take that hit, but it's not going to be a hit because we know that this person is excellent. And so it's been really an amazing opportunity to see that grow.
Do you when you're placing people, or I don't know, how do you word it so it doesn't sound like they're an object? How do you humanize that when you're helping people find employment, I guess?
Oh, when
Um,
I'm talking to an employer?
no, I was just trying to figure out how to say my question, but really the question is, do you have super large organizations and super like mom and pop shops and everything in between, or do you find a majority of your people go to larger places? Like, what's that look like?
I mean, it's everything. If you think Go Triangle, Fidelity Investments, state self-help credit union, state employees, and then all the way down, the language is always the same. We're going to give the small business the same respect and courtesy we give a large one, but it's more like a constant interview, right? So we
Yeah.
go in, hey, I noticed on your website that you're hiring for XYZ position. Can you tell me a little bit more about your ideal candidate? And as they begin to talk and say all the things, we listen, we ask questions, and then we would love to refer people to you. Can we set up something what that looks like? Now we've established that we're on a go. Okay, so before I go, I want to ask a couple questions. Do you have any educational requirements? Does someone have to, and if they say they have to have their high school diploma or GED, then we have a Durham Tech Scholarship Fund where we pay for people to go back to school. If it's someone who is a great candidate and doesn't have their GED, and we will pay for them to get their GED, would you consider hiring them? Even though I understand that you do have this policy, would you? So now we worked out education. Great. What's next? Criminal
You'll
background.
just crush barriers. Like literally, like we'll access anything. We'll overcome, we'll smash down the things that stop you from getting this job. That's so ingenious.
That's again, having an executive director who believes in people is key, because as a program staff we work one-on-one with our participants, and we have our monthly meeting, and we're like, we don't know what to do. Our participants can't get a job because of education. And then she said, okay, and went to the board and fought and got whatever we needed to say we will now pay for people to go to school. So that program is called Elevate, and we have this partnership with Durham Tech, and then they get a small stipend. The stipend is not enough to live on, but it's also just a little bit to make it easier, right? That's what we can do. We can make it easier. And so then we come up to criminal backgrounds. Oh, we have this strict policy. Hey, I completely understand. Are there any ways that you can work with a criminal background? Any ways? And we begin to try to understand, are there strict policies that they have because of their insurance, where maybe they can't hire someone with larceny? Cool. You can't hire someone with larceny. Doesn't mean you can't hire someone with this charge, right? I'll take whatever we can get. And the thing is about our participants, they deserve all the credit. Because if one participant goes in there and kills it, they're going to want more. Doesn't matter what it is, right? They see the value. And so it's that if we can get an employer to take one chance, we got them. And that's how we got them.
Because they're going to say, yes, send more, send more.
Yeah.
That trust is everything. We got a comment in the chat. It says, wow, you're amazing. What you're doing needs to be nationwide, is what they said. And I totally agree. It's like, it's so customized to the person. So like you hear about person-centered recovery and person-centered language and person-centered, person-centered employment's kind of important, it seems like.
Yeah, it
That's crazy.
is. It really is. Duke, they shared with us, with our HR, we have our meeting about once a quarter to see how things are going. And they said they get over 1,000 resumes a day. A day. I could not deal with the stress of that. And if you're working in HR, it is your responsibility to find the right person, to find the right one. And that's where leveraging your partnerships are so important, because we'll have our person go through the partnership and then call, hey, listen, I have this person, and give them a brief bio. This is what you're going to see. Can you interview them? And again, we do that because we don't want our participants taking that hit, the constant rejection. If the HR tells me no, I understand, and that's fine. But if there's any way to get a yes, I'm going to bat. I'm going to fight and advocate all day. Another huge thing that comes out of employment for people in substance abuse like the gentleman you mentioned you seen yesterday, is housing, right? How can we find housing? So we have another part of our program. It's called restorative housing. So when someone's working and they're in our program, they take the financial education course, and now they're able to get 1-bedroom apartment for $700. That's without criminal background check. That's without credit check. That's without history, eviction history. $700 and utilities included. And they do that for a few months while they continue in the program so they can continue to save. And then they take over an actual lease, and this is their apartment. They've transitioned. It's about that. Employment leads to everything else, but we need to be organizations that are willing to be that bridge in the middle. But employment is like the key. You can do nothing if you cannot work and take care of yourself.
So help me understand that again, because I was just typing restorative housing program in the chat. So how long do people have to be, if they want to be a part of that restorative housing program, how long do they have to be in your services and trying to find employment and then saving before they can start looking for that within your program?
So that's great. So step one is employment, right? That's our step one program. And so let's say you take our workshop next week, October 14th, you graduate, and you get a job November 12th. You will start our step two program, which starts in January. So now we're 1 month in, 2 months in, 3 months in, you start step two, and you take that class for 8 weeks. So you've been working and saving. Now we're really looking at your finance. We're meeting every week to talk about your budget. You want to pay $700 a month. How much are you bringing in? How much are you spending? Where do we need to cut costs? And it's not just about 700. You need almost twice, triple that. Not because you have to pay a deposit, but if anything goes wrong, you need to have something saved. Now, for some people, they're able to get it really quickly. Other people, it may take them 6 months to get that money together, and then they can transition into restorative housing.
So I feel like we're just scratching the surface of what you can do for people, because my perception, obviously I didn't creep hard enough, right? It was employment, but as you're talking about employment transitioning into housing, like when you're talking about being with the few in a deep way, you're also talking about, it seems like in a long way, like right. Over time. Like what are some of your participants' timelines on doing this stuff, and how long are you with them?
Yeah. So that runs it based on the participant. It's generally about 1.5 years, and then they can go into step 3, which is where they get a stipend once a quarter. So it's $1,000 spread out over the year, and each one of them has a passion project. And so we match them with someone in the community who will help them. Ebony is working hard on voting rights for those who have felonies and transitioning home. Someone else is working on transitional homes that allow married couples to stay together versus splitting them up, because she went through that. Miss Leontine is super passionate about voting rights being restored. And so they're working on things to try to change the legislature of our state. And these are our participants. So they tend to be with us about 2.5 years. For people coming out of step 1, a lot of times the first goal is getting a car. And so if they're able to save $632, they buy a car. No car payment, no anything. And so the program is about walking with them deeply from employment, because we know that's your first goal. But what are the other things that caused you to feel in the place that you were, where you felt that substances was the only escape, right? It's not just about a job. There's other things that happen to them, that really happen to them, to make them go down that road. We need to help you figure out the answer to all of those, not tell you the answer, not give you anything, but we're going to help you. One thing we're doing right now, which I'm super excited about, is a resiliency groups. So we have a male and a female therapist who offer these free group counseling sessions to our participants. They come on Wednesday nights. I'm in the group with the women. There's 10 women who come on a Wednesday night and are just sharing and pouring out all of these things. Because what did we realize? Well, we can help people work and we can give them access to resource, but all that stuff is still there. They're still carrying all of that. And if we can't help them with that, then you face relapse. You face all recidivism. You face all the other things. Community and employment can change everything.
It's so true. The community aspect of it, in my personal active addiction, I had to move and like I followed myself around for 5 different states. Apparently, I was the problem, which makes sense, right? But
Yeah.
eventually, I got in a place where the people I was connecting with, that's the community part of it, and the environment was changing, and that was the catalyst for like life change. It wasn't just willpower or anything else. So, like just like you said, it's just spot on. So I've got a. You are more than welcome not to answer this question, basically. So I heard that you. So with how do I say it? So with Step Up Durham, I heard like the word ministry in it, and I wasn't aware. Is it Step Up Ministry or Step Up Durham?
That's a good question.
And I
Step
want
Up
to know what that means.
Ministry is in Raleigh. That
Okay.
was the beginning of Step Up. So there's Step Up Ministry. And then you have Step Up Greensboro, Wilmington, and Durham.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
multiple locations, and you're out of specifically Durham?
Durham. So I started in Raleigh. That's where I went through the program. And I started working there in 2014. And then in 2019, worked in Durham.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So when we have specific people who, if we're in service fields right now, there are people running through our minds, if we're in this area specifically, that we want to be able to get connected with an amazing program like that. Is that simply going to the website, or is there a way that you want us to connect that way?
Yeah, so you can just either go to our website. Any emails that someone wants to ask me, send me directly are also fine. So it's just elizabeth@stepupdurham.org.
Let me write that.
And I feel that that's helpful for community partners because sometimes they want to talk more about their specific person or what that person's going to need. And if it's a referral from a community partner and their person doesn't have a laptop access to our technology, then we want to make sure we can set that up for them. Like, how can we get them in our program?
That's beautiful. Okay, so
You
got the email address in there. Go ahead.
You said about 5 states, like living in 5 states.
Yeah.
As a teenager in Florida, my journey, I started selling drugs at 12. I would carry them in
Wow.
my cello case, and I would just have to carry them all day and then give them back to the person at the end of the day. And that started my journey. And by 15, ecstasy hits really hard in South Florida. And so partying all the time, and you always think you're okay. You always think this is just what we do because we're having fun, and transition into cocaine and drinking all the time. But I'm still thinking I'm totally fine. I'm totally fine. And then I go in the military. And so now I'm in Texas and I'm partying even harder because and again, not realizing I'm running from things. And then I get to North Carolina and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to get high anymore. But I start drinking. And at this point, I'm just working at Burger King and the liquor store is right there. So every day I'd go buy my big bottle of liquor, put it in my book bag and take it to work. And then in between running the drive through, go and take shots. And somehow had convinced myself I was totally fine. I had a job. I didn't have community. I just was working just to work, right? And that's why I feel it's so important, the employment in the community and businesses and employers who are invested in their staff. Their staff is their biggest asset. Really, it is. So yeah, going to prison and coming back out was really like for me, like I'm not gonna make these choices anymore. And again, I'm not unique. There are so many just like that who just give them a chance. They don't even need a chance. Just open the door a little bit and then they're going to blow it up. There's never going to be a door again. It's amazing.
So when you combine that community aspect with the job and with your restorative housing program, it's like, hey, here's a life. Like you have capacity for family, you have capacity for people beside yourself once you're stable, and those types of things. How do you because I'm sure you do, how do you help people create that community apart from in the workplace with some of the things you do?
Yeah. So one of the first things we ask at orientation too is like, so I tell them like all the things we can do. And I'm like, so who's the most important person on this call right now? And not too many of them will say themselves, right? Oh, you are Miss Elizabeth because you're going to connect us. It's not about me, right? It's about what you can put into it. So the other thing is who has someone to take care of, and only the people with children will ever raise their hand. And I'll say all of us are a community. We're a community by ourselves because we have a lot in us to give, and like now we want to support each other. So during our workshops, this is the entry point into Step Up. It's not just us talking to the students. We have them talk to each other. All right, so Justin, you heard what Miss Leontine said in her interview. What did you think she did well? And we're constantly talk to each other about what you did well. And what that helps the other ones is like, wow, they were listening to me, wow, they heard me, wow, they are affirming me. They might not use that language, but that's the feeling that happens. Right. And because you're spending all these days together every day and constantly talking to each other, and then in a positive way, okay, is there anything you think Justin could have did better? I thought he did great, but if he added this, because now it's showing the person speaking, your voice matters, your opinion matters, and you know how to use decisive listening and critical thinking, and you're great. So throughout the week, it's just amazing. On Thursday, we do our graduation. And if you're the person I'm graduating for, we call you up to the front, and now we're going to read this thing we read all this week. What I saw about you was this and this. The way you show up is XYZ. The power that you bring. And just if you can show someone in just 3 days virtually, we recognize this about you. Your class recognized this about you. I feel like that's just so important to set them up confidently that you are worthy. And so, and then after they graduate, we keep meeting every Monday. And it's just more of the same, reinforcing until they get that job and join the rest of our program.
Is there a perfect candidate that you want to support? And is there anyone you can't support?
There is no perfect candidate to me. I love the person who is super quiet and has a stutter and has been through so much and is just coming out of addiction, because you just want to love on them. And I love the person who has that fire in their eye, because like they won't give me a chance, but as soon as I get one, I'm gonna make it. Like all of them are perfect to me, and that might seem, but it is. What was the second part of your question?
Second part was, is there anyone that just couldn't qualify to that you could provide services to that just can't receive them?
And I hope that this isn't offensive to anyone who might be watching.
Sure.
Prior to COVID, we did not serve anyone who was on the sex offender registry, because we were in a lot of churches or communities where they weren't allowed. Because we're virtual, we've thrown the doors open because they're not coming with us. One gentleman, amazing, he got a job right away at a warehouse and has done well and got his house and his car and all these things. So the pandemic, while it's been extremely hard, has also been really beautiful because it opens more that we can serve more. So yeah, there's nobody. We take them out. Yeah,
that's right.
As long as you're 18 and older.
And I haven't heard you one time say any like limiting access to services has anything to do with moral judgments, period. Mm-hmm. It's like, how can we get you pragmatically into employment and supportive services? And it's beautiful. Yeah. I can hear about that community. It's incredible. Go ahead.
Community is everything. I was just going to say the hardest part about doing employment-based recovery services, doing employment at all, is having to make that tough call when someone is not ready. When they are not ready and you want them to be ready, you can't make that choice for them. They are not ready. And sometimes we do have to let people go, listen, I'm sorry, but I want you to come back in 30 days, right? Come back and let me know how you're doing. But not just, I can't help you get out. I'm going to connect you. If it's okay, I'll call them right now while you're with me. And let's see if we can get you help here. There's someone, the best personality. He joined us and it seemed like it was going well, and then he relapsed. He cannot be part of our program. We still talk every week. We're still, because we want him to know when you're ready, we're here. We're not just, we only want a certain person. We want you, but you have to want you too.
Is there any, and we have plenty of time, but if you're done with what you want to say, is there any final comments you want to say before I open all this up for any kind of questions people might have?
I don't think so. I think I talked a lot. I just hope people, you cannot think about addiction and employment the way you always have. It's a limiting belief. We all have unconscious biases. I have some biases. But I just challenge everybody to just maybe think different and think about who you're missing out on as an employee, as a coworker, as a teammate, because of that unconscious bias.
I love that. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Thank you for being here. We're going to open this up. Anyone who's in the chat who wants to ask Elizabeth any kind of questions, I'll give it a couple, maybe about 20 seconds here for you to ask those questions in the chat, and then we'll wrap it up here. While people are putting stuff in the chat for you as well, I did have a question for you about the resilience that you keep talking about in your people.
Yeah.
I've always just thought, like, people who are in recovery, we have the biggest hearts, even though sometimes we don't seem like it. We have the most entrepreneurial skills. We have the most overcoming attitude because we've lived through hell and we made it.
Yeah.
And you know, it might still be right there, but we know it's there, and so we're still moving. And so I want to maybe hear why it is that you think the people that you're supporting are so resilient, apart from just the recovery aspect of who they are. And while you're doing that, I'll field some questions.
I think that when you've gone through something, really gone through something, it just shapes everything about you. I remember having a friend who our lives are completely opposite. She hadn't been through any of the things, and she wanted to go through things so that it could make her stronger. And I was like, do not ask for that. Do not. I think, especially with addiction, when you beat that monster, when you can wake up day one and be sober, and that turns into day two, like that feeling will drive you because now you know what it took to get through that. And it's not just the first day you don't get high. It's the first day that you stop being sick from not getting high, right? When you can calm down and you can breathe. That resiliency, the determination it takes to do that. What's a problem at work? Nothing. What do you need? I can do anything, right? That becomes the attitude. What's going on? I got this. You do become, I am not trying to be egotistical, but I know that I am excellent. And I know that I'm excellent. And I know that I support my team well because I know very well what it was like to be alone, to need support, to fight every day, and to run from my problems. So now, and I never run, I show up. And that's the story of people who have that past. You learned how to show up for yourself, and you learned what it cost to get there, and you learned that there was someone, even if it was one person, who had your back, who supported you. And so you just show up to work in a different way. Like, I'm excellent and I know. Not to be egotistical, but it's just I'm excellent and I know.
I want to thank you for being here. It's been a pleasure and an honor to hear from you. I love how you connect your excellence. Every time you talk about it, you talk about the people around you as well. And I love how you create that atmosphere. Thank you to Step Up as well. You are doing life and employment and connection in a different way, and people need to know about it. So thank you so much for being here. And yeah, we'll close it down. Really appreciate you. Y'all who are in the chat, make sure you connect to our other presenters and presentations that will be going on for the rest of the day as well.